New fallout tonight over Donald Trump doing something that I will tell you he has never done before in public. He is now directly attacking Bob Mueller by name, and this escalation comes amidst an unusual late-night Friday firing of a key witness in the obstruction case that could be built against the White House. The former deputy to James Comey, FBI official Andrew McCabe, is out. And tonight, members of Congress calling for an investigation of that very firing, and many, even in both parties, warning Trump against moving on Mueller. This is not a drill right now. McCabe punching back. He says the Trump administration singled him out and treated him this way because of his role in the aftermath of the firing of James Comey. He also alleges on the record this was part of an effort to discredit him as a witness. Now, let's stop right there. There is a lot going on, but there's a reason this is our top story, because it is the biggest story in the country right now. You're witnessing a 20-year FBI veteran, a registered Republican, who rose to the very top of that agency, acting FBI director. And he is saying, under his own name on the record, not a leak, that he was fired by the Trump administration, not over his conduct, which would be fine, but he's saying it was over his role in an open criminal probe into your White House. It's a big deal. Now, Jeff Sessions, I should mention, didn't take this whole action in the daylight, literally. You're looking at the file footage we have of what it looked like at the White House Friday night. That was the time when Jeff Sessions announced this firing, when most federal employees were home for the week, when most reporters were gone. Now, cable news does run pretty late, but honestly, most of us were also out of the office by then. Eventually, we do go home. McCabe argues that was the point. I want to read more from this because it's important. He says nothing about this was a normal personnel decision, but in process, he argues that was accelerated only after he testified he would corroborate James Comey's accounts of discussions with the president. And even still, that late Friday night news, it hit like a bombshell and kept playing out on the Sunday shows as most Democrats and some Republicans warned this president against taking this firing campaign. That's what it is now, a campaign of firing. They warned him not to take it against Mueller. Now, the Trump administration already, in these brief few days since Friday, have been inconsistent about the core question, and it is a question with criminal implications. The question tonight, and we're about to explore it with some experts here, why was McCabe really fired? Jeff Sessions says it's because McCabe misled an internal review regarding the Hillary Clinton case. Can't make it up. But Donald Trump, he doesn't agree. He couldn't let that sit. He's already tweeting that McCabe's wife was a Democrat and his memos about being a witness to Trump interactions are, quote, maybe fake memos. Now, that's Trump sharing his view of why this matters, and it's revealing. He's talking about McCabe as a witness. And while all of this could add to an obstruction case against the White House, and by that I mean against people who work at or with the White House or potentially the president himself, there are clear signs that this has been in the works for a while. Take a look at the foreign policy report here that Trump's aim was to discredit several top FBI officials, including specifically McCabe, because he would back up Comey. That report from months ago is context for McCabe's firing on that late Friday night. You might say this idea was written into the plans a long time ago. And it shows something else that I think gets lost a lot and that we in the media sometimes get wrong. Consider how Trump methodically, insistently keeps moving the pieces on the board. Things actually looked pretty bad for him when Comey was first fired, and McCabe was his, remember, acting FBI director, and he'd been in the room when Comey was recounting Trump's actions, including things that are now under criminal investigation. And at that time, we all remember that dramatic testimony. In Comey, the president faced this lifelong public servant going out under oath, detailing things that sounded, I will say it, they sounded like evidence of obstruction, while his deputy was still in power at the FBI. But tonight, both men fired, and they're subject to a massive public discrediting campaign. So who's next? Well, in the past 10 months, note that Trump never took on Mueller directly. He praised him. He said he thought he would be fair. He was looking forward to the interview with him. He even called him, in June, an honorable man. And while Mueller was running that Russia probe, Trump didn't tweet about him that whole time, even once, until this weekend after the late-night firing, where he's now mentioned him twice. You know, many call Donald Trump impulsive. I hear that even from many of his critics. It's not always the case. When it comes to Donald Trump's criminal defense strategy, note the discipline here. I don't see impulse. We see cunning, we see planning, we see premeditation. Tonight's news is now breaking, because it doesn't stop, that Donald Trump is hiring a new lawyer who is pushing a very particular conspiracy theory, which obviously, as I'm about to show you, has Bob Mueller as the target and the FBI as the co-conspirators.
A group of FBI and DOJ people were trying to frame Donald Trump of a falsely created crime.
They were going to exonerate Hillary, and they were going to frame Donald Trump.
James Comey threw the case against Hillary Clinton in conjunction with senior FBI officials. Comey sold his soul to the devil.
Comey sold his soul to the devil was the charge there. Were you listening to a pundit? Were you listening to a commentator? Were you listening to a political spokesman? Well, as of tonight, I can report here on The Beat, what you're listening to when you hear that is Joe DeGeneva. You're listening to a new member of Donald Trump, your president's legal team. Let me turn now to former federal prosecutor Mimi Rocah, Fran Figliuzzi, a former assistant FBI director who has done work on the disciplinary process within the FBI and brings that expertise, and Bill Kristol, founder and editor-at-large for the Weekly Standard. Bill, your view of this theory that we are seeing a very methodical, non-impulsive strategy that appears to be circling in closer now in public on Bob Mueller.
Yeah, you and I have discussed this before, and I'm very much with you. I mean, Trump is impetuous in some ways and undisciplined in some ways, but he's pretty determined when it's his own interests at heart, that are at stake. And he's pretty cunning, I think, in a sort of low but sometimes effective way. And I think he took from the beginning, he understood that he needed to take the O.J. Simpson defense strategy, discredit the investigators. He wasn't going to win this on the merits. This wasn't going to be a clean defense where he would prove that there's nothing untoward happened. But if you confuse things, if you make the investigators look, some of them corrupt, some of them incompetent, some of them conflicted, all the things Trump's been saying, incidentally, if you raise enough doubts, just as with the O.J. jury, which some of whom might have been inclined to want to believe O.J. anyway, so with Republicans, congressmen and senators and Republican voters who would like to believe Trump, it gives them enough to hang on to say the whole investigation is discredited.
Bill,
that is his strategy.
It up. You went there. I'm going to go there with you, all right? You're making the argument that this is Johnny Cochran-esque because faced with a difficult fact pattern for the defendant, the potential defendant in this case, the only legal path left is to try to put the system on trial.
Yeah, and I mean, at the very beginning, he wanted to see, he had Comey over his first week in the White House, one-on-one dinner, to see how much Comey knew. He tried to work Comey a bit. He decided that wasn't going to work, fired Comey. From that point on, I think, and then once Mueller gets appointed, he's wanted to curb the investigation, limit the investigation, discredit the investigation, end the investigation. I'm not sure he's decided, President Trump has decided exactly what he will do when. He probably hasn't, but I think that's his steady goal.
Mimi.
Yeah, this is a classic put the government on trial. If you can't beat the facts, then go after the fact finders. Because here, you know, the facts are not good for President Trump from what little we know, and we don't know everything. So I think, you know, Bill's exactly right. You're exactly right that this is a classic defense smear tactic.
Based on what we've seen, does it look like a legitimate firing of McCabe or not?
I think we don't know yet, honestly. You know, the IG is a neutral, nonpartisan entity and fact finder. And normally, I would have confidence in what the IG, the Inspector General of the FBI does.
As you may have gleaned from some of the reporting I did in the top of the show, I hear you on that, and I don't have beef with Michael Horowitz, but this doesn't look normal.
No, I agree. I said in normal times, and we are not in normal times. So I think that, you know, when you look at what happened here, and the FBI has been noticeably silent since McCabe was fired, and that is telling as well. The only one talking about this is was Trump.
Very telling. Frank, let me read to you what McCabe's lawyer is saying, and I spoke to his folks today, and they're not adding tonight, but they say this is their key focus. He notes, as a veteran of the DOJ as well, that he's been involved in DOJ and FBI disciplinary matters since '94. I've never before seen the type of rush to judgment and summary punishment we witnessed in the case of Andy McCabe. Fair, Frank?
Yeah, look, I served as a chief in the Office of Professional Responsibility in the FBI. I became the chief inspector of the FBI. I also sat on a senior executive disciplinary board in the FBI. I was involved in hundreds of internal FBI inquiries, and I can tell you, never once did we fire somebody at 10 p.m. on a Friday night, 26 hours before they were eligible for retirement. There's lots of unanswered questions here. We keep hearing that it was the FBI's OPR that came up with this recommendation. There's some unanswered questions there. Who did the interviews of Andy McCabe? Was it the DOJ IG alone? Did they allow FBI to sit in on that, which is very rare if that even happened? Or did they, as I suspect, simply hand the FBI OPR their findings, which used the deadly phrase lack of candor, and ask FBI OPR, what is your precedent for a lack of candor finding, in which case they would have had to say termination. We need some questions answered tonight.
Right. Look, Frank and Mimi are both doing, Bill, what public servants often do, which is give a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to call it a little bit of euphemism to what's going on. I'll put out what's going on as well, Bill, for the benefit of the viewers, with no disrespect to Mr. Horowitz and the career folks over there. The president personally targeted Andy McCabe in public, in writing, repeatedly for a range of reasons. Called for his ousting, referred to the timeline that is here in this Clinton review, and saying, let's get him before the pension. This report's not done, Bill. I've covered IG reports as well, and we can get as in the weeds and as boring as we want for anyone watching. There is an IG report process, and the report is finished, and it's complete. And the legal process, if it matters anywhere, it matters at the FBI and DOJ, where people specialize in due process. This was not due process. This was rushed out in this timeline that the president explicitly called for it, and done, Bill, by an attorney general, which I haven't even gotten to this yet because we're still getting started, attorney general who explicitly said under oath to the Congress he would recuse from matters involving the Clinton Foundation, and this is a firing regarding Andy McCabe's discussions with the Wall Street Journal about the Clinton Foundation.
I mean, if you want to give Jeff Sessions the benefit of the doubt, which maybe one shouldn't, but let's just do this thought experiment for 20 seconds. He might have been told by Trump, you fire McCabe or I fire you, and Sessions and Rosenstein and then Mueller, and get someone in there to fire Mueller. And Sessions may have thought, look, McCabe may have made some mistakes anyway. You know, if you want to use the OJ analogy, the LAPD did do some things wrong and wasn't entirely candid about them, right?
Bill Kristol going full OJ tonight.
No, yeah. But whatever the case, I mean, I think we shouldn't lose sight.
It is not the Attorney General's job, though. I know I'm firing hot. I'm going to give you a response. I'm going to give you time to respond, but I have to tell viewers, it is not the Attorney General's job to make firing decisions at the FBI based on threats from the president, if that was the motivation.
Well, that's an interesting. So I agree with that. It would be very interesting to know. This is a very simple factual question. Did Sessions discuss this with the president?
Great question.
I mean, that's a question we just could ask the Justice Department's Public Affairs Office and the White House
Great question.
Press Office.
And it comes in the background, Frank, of the House closing up the Russia probe and the Mueller probe reaching the Trump organization, not with a request, but with a subpoena. We have to keep our eye on what's going on with the heat, because we are in a moment of testing, I think, is what it looks like. Take a listen to Chris Wallace, who works at Fox News, criticizing the House approach to their conclusions in the Russia matter.
The president is using the House Intelligence Committee's findings, in effect, as grist, as a defense to say that there was no collusion. And what you're admitting is that there were a lot of key members to this investigation who you've never talked to, so your conclusion is not conclusive.
Frank?
Look, we are headed down a path that I've thought has been coming for a while, but the pieces are falling into place. I really fear for Mueller's longevity. I think that what's going to happen is that Rosenstein will be replaced and/or Sessions replaced first. I think that we'll see someone put into the DAG or AG position that will constrain Mueller, and then ultimately we may see Mueller go. That's what's being put into place here. With regard to McCabe, There's clear anomalies in how this was handled. How can you even adjudicate a finding against the deputy director of the FBI in an environment where the President of the United States, the executive branch head, is actually tainting the jury pool? He's sending messages publicly to his DOJ and FBI officials. This is what needs to happen.
Right. And how many federal officials and law enforcement does he need to fire after making queries about the criminal probe that touches him and his aides until you have something wider? And I think the undercurrent of the conversation tonight, I'm hearing from you, Frank, and Bill, and Mimi, I don't want to put any words in your mouth, but is everyone close to law enforcement and journalism right now is picking up that the escalation towards Mueller is real and that it is designed to constrain or remove him, not to let this probe end the way it's supposed to work in a lawful democracy. Mimi Rocah, Frank Figliuzzi, and Bill Kristol, thanks to each of you. Coming up, I have a new interview with the lawyer for Storm